My father asked me for one last favor before his surgery, and I said yes without thinking. I didn't know that one word would destroy everything: my family, my trust, and the life I thought I had. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a pediatric nurse at Riverside Children's Hospital. I've spent my whole life taking care of others, believing I had a good family who loved me back. Daddy's last favor. The hospital parking lot was already filling up when I pulled in at 7 in the morning. I'd taken the day off work specifically for this. Dad's heart surgery was scheduled for 9 o'clock, and I wanted to spend time with him before they wheeled him into the operating room. My phone buzzed with messages from coworkers wishing him well, but I put it away. Today was about family. The pre-op waiting room smelled like sterile soap and anxiety. I found Dad sitting on the edge of a hospital bed in a thin gown, his skin looking gray under the fluorescent lights. When he saw me, his whole face changed. He reached out and pulled me close, and I could feel him trembling against my chest. "Sarah, thank God you're here," he whispered into my hair. "I need to ask you something important." I pulled back to look at him. "Anything, Dad. What do you need?" He glanced around the room, then lowered his voice. "I need you to transfer some money for me, from my business account, to a lawyer handling some complicated stuff, just paperwork things, nothing serious." I felt a little flutter of hesitation, but I pushed it down. This was my father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd shown up to every school play, who'd held my hand when I was scared. "Of course," I said. "I can do that." Relief flooded his face. He reached into the small bag beside his bed and pulled out a card. On the back, in his slightly shaky handwriting, were account numbers and login information. "The surgery nurses would be coming soon," he explained. "He just needed me to handle this one thing. He trusted me more than anyone else right now, more than Mom, even. It's just that your mother and we're having some business disagreements," he said carefully. "I need this handled quietly. You're the only one I can count on." I took the card and held it tight. "Don't worry about anything. You just focus on getting better." He squeezed my hand. "I knew you'd come through for me. You're my girl, Sarah. Always have been." As the nurses started preparing him for surgery, I kissed his forehead and promised to handle everything. I had no idea what everything actually meant. I didn't read the fine print. I sat at my kitchen table that night with my laptop open, the account card in front of me. The numbers seemed to glow on the white surface. I kept thinking about Dad lying in recovery, probably still groggy from the anesthesia, trusting me to take care of this mysterious task. My fingers moved across the keyboard almost automatically. I logged into the business account using the information he'd given me. The website prompted me for security questions. "What was your mother's maiden name? When is your father's birthday?" I answered them all easily, using the family information Dad had told me over the years. The balance on the account was staggering. I'd known Dad's business was successful, but I hadn't realized exactly how successful. Millions of dollars sat in this account, waiting to be moved. I found the transfer option and entered the routing information for the lawyer's account. The amount appeared on the screen: $3 million. I stared at the numbers for a long moment. That was a lot of money. But Dad said it was legal business stuff. He'd said it was complicated, but necessary. I clicked confirm. The screen refreshed, and suddenly it was done. $3 million had moved from my father's business account to somewhere else, somewhere I didn't fully understand. The transaction went through smoothly, almost too smoothly, as if the system itself wanted this to happen. I felt a strange rush of pride mixed with relief. I'd done what he asked. I'd helped when he needed me most. I took a screenshot of the confirmation screen and texted it to Dad with a simple message: "All done. Love you." He responded an hour later. "Perfect. Thank you, baby. I love you so much. You're the best daughter in the world." I went to bed that night, feeling accomplished. I'd helped my father during a time when he was weak and scared. I'd proven that I was trustworthy, dependable, the kind of daughter anyone would want. I fell asleep thinking that I'd done something good, something that truly showed how much I loved my father. I had no idea that I'd just committed a crime. When he woke up lying, the recovery room was all beeping machines and quiet efficiency. I sat beside Dad's bed, watching his eyes flutter open slowly. The surgery had gone well. The surgeon had told us that Dad's heart was strong, that everything looked good. He just needed time to heal now. When he finally seemed to focus on my face, his hand reached out and found mine. His grip was weak but determined. "Sarah," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you. Thank you for everything. I knew I could count on you no matter what. I squeezed his hand gently, careful not to dislodge any of the monitors attached to him. You're going to be fine, Dad. You're going to be fine. I love you so much, he said, and tears started rolling down the sides of his face. You're the best daughter in the entire world. I don't say it enough, but you are. I felt my own eyes getting hot. This was my father at his most vulnerable, his most honest. This was what really mattered, not money or business complications, just the two of us, connected by blood and love and the kind of trust that was supposed to last forever. A nurse came in to check his vitals, and we both fell quiet. The machines continued their steady rhythm. Everything felt safe and right, like we were suspended in a perfect moment where nothing bad could ever happen. Around mid-afternoon, a nurse mentioned casually that Dad had had some visitors earlier, something about lawyers and paperwork. I found this strange. Lawyers? On the day of surgery? When I asked Dad about it, his whole body seemed to tense up. His eyes darted away from mine. Nothing important, he said quickly, and just some business associates. Don't worry about it. Dad, you just had major heart surgery. You shouldn't be dealing with business stuff right now. He was already waving his hand dismissively, but I noticed something in his expression that I'd never seen before, something that looked like fear mixed with guilt. I'm tired, he said suddenly. I think I need to rest. Why don't you head home and get some sleep yourself? You've been through a lot today. It was the first time my father had ever asked me to leave. And even though I didn't understand why, I went. I kissed his forehead and promised to come back in the morning. He didn't respond, just closed his eyes and turned his face toward the wall. Everything falls apart at once. I was in the pediatric unit, helping a 6-year-old with asthma get comfortable in his hospital bed, when my phone rang. It was Mom. The moment I heard her voice, I knew something was terribly wrong. Sarah! Oh my God! Sarah! She was screaming so loudly that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Your father, the police are here. They're in our house with lawyers and they're asking about money and nobody can find him. Mom, slow down. What are you talking about? My hands were shaking. $3 million, she screamed. $3 million is gone from your father's business account. The police think it was stolen. They think he stole it or someone stole it, and they won't tell me what's happening. I felt the room start to spin. I excused myself from the child's room and stepped into the hallway, leaning against the cold wall. Mom, listen to me. But I didn't know how to finish that sentence. Did you know anything about this? Her voice was sharp now, cutting through my confusion like a knife. Sarah, tell me you didn't know anything about this. The hallway seemed to close in around me. Other nurses walked past, and I wanted to scream at them to look at me, to help me, to tell me this wasn't real. I need to go, I told Mom, my voice barely audible. I need to think about this. Sarah, if you know something. I hung up. I stood in that hallway for a long time, my mind replaying everything. The account numbers, the security questions, the transfer, the confirmation screen I'd taken a picture of. Oh God, the confirmation screen. I'd just helped my father steal $3 million, and somehow everyone was going to think it was me. My hands were still shaking as I turned in my resignation to my supervisor. I told her it was a family emergency. She asked if everything was okay. I couldn't answer her because I didn't have an answer. Nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. I was the perfect thief. The police came to my apartment on a Thursday evening. I'd been expecting them. There were 2 of them, a man and a woman, both in plain clothes, but with badges hanging from their belts. They were very polite when they asked if they could come inside. I invited them in and sat on my couch, waiting for the questions that would change everything. Ms. Mitchell, the female officer began, we are investigating an unauthorized transfer of $3 million from your father's business account. We have evidence that you accessed the account using someone else's credentials. He gave me the credentials, I said immediately. My father gave me the account numbers and the security information. He asked me to make the transfer. The 2 officers exchanged a look. The male officer leaned forward slightly. And you have proof of this request? My heart sank. He asked me at the hospital, before his surgery, but I didn't. There might be text messages afterward. I showed them the conversation on my phone. Dad's texts, thanking me, calling me his best daughter. The officers photographed it carefully. Did he ever mention why he needed the transfer? The female officer asked. He said it was for a lawyer. He said it was complicated business stuff. He said he trusted me more than anyone else. The male officer sat back in his chair. Ms. Mitchell, I need to tell you something. When we questioned your father about this transfer, he claimed he never asked you to do it. He says he doesn't know how his account was accessed. He suggested that someone, possibly you, stole his login information and committed this fraud. The world tilted. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Your father has also mentioned that he was concerned about you recently. He said you'd been asking questions about his business, his finances. He wondered if maybe you felt like you didn't get enough money from him. Tears started running down my face. That's not true. He asked me to do it. He gave me everything I needed. We'll need to look at your bank records, the female officer said gently. We'll need to check if any of that money came to you. It didn't, I said. I didn't get any of the money. I was just helping my dad. The officers stayed for another hour, asking me the same questions in different ways. Did I have financial problems? Was I angry at my father? Had we argued recently? With each question, I felt myself sinking deeper into a pit I couldn't climb out of. Before they left, the male officer handed me a card. You should probably get a lawyer, Ms. Mitchell, for your protection. After they were gone, I sat on my couch in the dark and realized the truth. I had been the perfect thief because I was completely innocent. My father's secret affair, Mom showed up at my door 3 days later. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her hair was pulled back into a messy bun. When I opened the door, she pushed past me and sat down on my couch. I can't take it anymore, she said without preamble. I can't keep lying for him. Mom, what are you talking about? She looked at me for a long moment, then the whole story came pouring out like water breaking through a dam. Dad had been having an affair for 3 years with a woman named Victoria who worked at his gym. Victoria was younger than me, 32, and according to Mom, she was a con artist. She'd been blackmailing Dad, threatening to tell Mom about their relationship unless he gave her money. He's been giving her hundreds of thousands of dollars, Mom said, her voice hollow. I found the transactions hidden in the business account. Different amounts, different dates, all going to accounts he never told me about. Oh my God, I whispered. The lawyer he mentioned? Sarah, there is no lawyer. Victoria has a boyfriend, a real con man, just like her. They've been working together. They wanted the money to run. Your father was planning to leave us. He was planning to leave me and take the money and start a new life with Victoria. I felt sick. I sat down hard on the floor. But then the boyfriend got impatient, Mom continued. He wanted bigger money faster. That's when your father came up with the plan to have you do the transfer. He thought if the money came from you, if your fingerprints were on it digitally, then he could claim he was the victim. He could say his accounts were compromised, that someone stole from him, and when the police investigated, they'd find you. He set me up, I said flatly. He set you up, Mom confirmed. His own daughter. He made you commit a federal crime so he could cover his tracks while he ran away with his mistress. The apartment spun around me. My father hadn't trusted me with a secret. He'd used me as a shield. He'd been willing to send me to prison to save himself. The police found out everything, Mom said. They tracked Victoria's phone records, found the boyfriend, discovered they'd been casing the airport for flights to Panama. They were going to leave with $3 million last Tuesday. Why didn't they? Because I called the detective and told them everything I knew, Mom said. I gave them the evidence I'd found. I chose my daughter over my husband. I looked at my mother, this woman who'd been betrayed just as badly as I had, and I realized something. I wasn't the only victim here, but I was the only one going to face criminal charges. I could go to prison. My lawyer's name was Michael Chen, and he had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he was thinking. We sat in his office on a Tuesday morning, and he laid out my options like they were all equally terrible. The prosecution has offered you a plea deal, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. You plead guilty to wire fraud. No trial. In exchange, they recommend probation, community service, and a fine. You won't do prison time. But, I asked, because I could hear the but in his tone. But you'll have a felony record. Your nursing license will be suspended, possibly permanently. You'll have to register as someone convicted of fraud. Employers will see this. Background checks will show this. Your life will be complicated. I picked up the folder and opened it. The legal language meant nothing to me. All I could see was the words felony and conviction. What's the alternative? I asked. We go to trial. We argue that your father forced you into this, that you were a victim of coercion and paternal authority. We present evidence of the affair, the blackmail, the plan to frame you. That sounds better, Michael shook his head. It sounds better until we lose, which is likely. Your father is a successful businessman. You transferred the money yourself. There's a digital trail. The jury will see evidence that you knew what you were doing, and your father will testify that he never asked you to do this. But I have the text messages. He thanked me. He said he loved me, which could be interpreted as him rewarding you for a crime you committed, Michael said quietly. Look, Sarah, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how juries think. Your father has a criminal defense fund. He has expensive lawyers. He'll look remorseful on the stand. He'll say he doesn't understand how it happened. He might even cry. I felt tears running down my own face. If you go to trial and lose, you're looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Your nursing career is over either way, but at least with the plea deal, you keep your freedom. So I lose either way, I said bitterly. You lose either way, Michael confirmed. The question is just how much you lose. I sat in his office for a long time after he finished talking, staring at the plea agreement. My whole adult life, I'd done everything right. I'd gone to college. I'd become a nurse. I'd helped people. I'd been a good daughter. I'd loved my family. And none of it mattered, because the person everyone would believe was my own father. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to accept the plea deal. I wasn't going to let my father destroy my life without fighting back. Somehow, I was going to prove the truth. I started digging deeper. The private detective's office smelled like coffee and desperation. His name was Frank Patterson, and he came highly recommended by Michael. Frank had worked for the FBI for 15 years before starting his own agency, and Michael said he was the best there was at finding hidden truths. I laid out everything I knew: the affair, the blackmail, the mysterious lawyer, Victoria's existence. Frank listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small leather notebook. This is good, he said when I finished. Really good. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next 3 weeks, Frank worked miracles. He obtained phone records that showed Dad had texted Victoria the day before he asked me to make the transfer. The messages were coded but clear. The problem will be solved tomorrow. You'll have what we discussed. He dug into Victoria's background and found she had a long criminal history. Fraud charges in 3 different states, men who'd suddenly lost large amounts of money after dating her, a pattern of manipulation and theft that stretched back 15 years. Frank tracked down Victoria's boyfriend, a man named Derek Chen, who'd served 6 years in prison for wire fraud and identity theft. Derek had gotten out 2 years ago and apparently went straight into a life of crime with Victoria. They're professionals, Frank told me, spreading documents across his desk. This isn't their first time. They've probably stolen millions over the years. Your father was just another target. The most damning evidence came from an email Frank was able to retrieve from Victoria's cloud account, emails he'd obtained through legal channels I didn't quite understand. In them, Victoria and Derek discussed their plan in detail. They talked about convincing Dad to do the transfer himself, about making sure his fingerprints weren't on anything, about using his daughter as a patsy to take the blame. Oh my God, I whispered, reading their casual words about my destruction. There's more, Frank said. He pulled up a travel booking confirmation. Dad and Victoria had booked first-class tickets to Panama for the day after my arrest was supposed to happen. They'd reserved a beachfront villa for 3 months. They'd already transferred a partial down payment using funds from a separate account, one Dad had apparently kept secret from everyone. He was really going to do it, I said numbly. He was really going to leave. That's what the evidence suggests, Frank said. Your father fell hard for Victoria. She played him perfectly. And when things started to fall apart, he chose to save himself rather than face the consequences. I brought all of Frank's evidence to Michael, who brought it to the police. Everything changed then. The investigation shifted. New arrests were made. The tables turned. Dad was arrested at the airport. He was trying to board a flight to Panama using a forged passport under the name James Patterson. Victoria and Derek were caught trying to transfer the remaining money through offshore accounts. The news coverage was immediate and intense. Local businessman accused of fraud, the headlines read. Daughter was alleged patsy in $3 million scheme, read another. I watched from my apartment as my father's life fell apart on live television. He was led out of the courthouse in handcuffs, his expensive suit looking suddenly cheap and pathetic. He tried to cover his face with his jacket, but the cameras got him anyway. Victoria looked defiant. Derek looked angry. but my father just looked broken. The charges piled up quickly: wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and several counts related to using his daughter in a criminal scheme. The prosecution was aggressive, building a case that showed a calculated, premeditated plan to commit fraud and evade justice. My charges were dropped quietly. No fanfare, no public statement initially. Michael told me that the prosecution had reviewed all the evidence and determined that I was indeed a victim of paternal coercion and manipulation. I was a witness now, not a defendant. The police issued a brief press release stating that I was not criminally liable for the transfer and that I had cooperated fully with the investigation. My attorney released a statement thanking the police for their diligence in protecting my rights, but the damage was already done. People knew my name. They'd read that I'd transferred $3 million. Even though the charges were dropped, the whispers would never stop. My nursing license was reinstated without permanent damage. The hospital welcomed me back tentatively. My colleagues greeted me with a mixture of sympathy and suspicion. I'd become the girl whose father was a criminal. That would follow me forever. The real revenge came in the courtroom. My father's defense tried to paint him as a victim of Victoria's manipulation. They argued that he was so emotionally compromised that he couldn't be held fully responsible for his actions. It was a pathetic defense, and the judge clearly saw through it. Dad was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Victoria got 5 years. Derek got 6. The judge was particularly harsh with Dad, noting in his written decision that his willingness to sacrifice his innocent daughter showed a profound moral failing. As the judge read the sentence, I sat in the gallery and watched my father's shoulders collapse. His expensive lawyer whispered something to him, but Dad wasn't listening. He was staring at me. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw something in his face that I'd never seen before: genuine remorse. And beneath that, desperation. He was looking at me like I was the last person on earth who might forgive him. I looked away. I choose myself. Now, 6 months later, I received a job offer from a hospital in Portland, Oregon. It was a pediatric position, just like my old job, but in a place where nobody knew my name or my story. I accepted immediately. The day before I was supposed to leave, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes. My phone rang. It was a prison facility in Pennsylvania. My father wanted to talk to me. I almost didn't accept the call. My finger hovered over the decline button, but something made me answer. "Sarah?" His voice was different, smaller, older. "Hi, Dad." "I don't know what to say to you," he began. "I've tried to write you letters, but I can never find the right words. I wanted you to hear my voice at least once more." I said nothing. "I was a coward," he continued. "I did terrible things because I was weak and foolish, and I let someone manipulate me. But that's no excuse for what I did to you. You were innocent, and I was willing to let you go to prison to save myself. That's unforgivable." "You're right," I said. "It is. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you, even though I know I can't. I've set up a fund for your education. Any advanced certifications you want. I've left you money in my will. It's not enough, but it's all I can do." "I don't want your money, Dad." Silence on the other end. "I don't want your guilt. I don't want your attempts at redemption. I want you to understand what you did and live with that. I want you to spend your time here thinking about the daughter you were willing to destroy. That's all I want from you. Sarah, goodbye, Dad." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I loaded the last box into my car. My childhood home, the place where my father had taught me to ride a bike, where he'd held my hand through illness, where he'd pretended to love me while planning to betray me, was now just a memory. In Portland, I started over. I got my certification in pediatric trauma and specialized in working with abused children. I helped kids who had been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect them. Their pain made sense to me in a way I couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't lived it. Years passed. I built a life that was honest and good and entirely my own. I made friends who didn't know my story. I dated men who didn't ask about my past. I learned that trust was possible again, even after it had been shattered into pieces. My father was released after serving 6 years. He tried to contact me several times. I never responded. His letters piled up, unopened. Eventually, he stopped writing. I heard through my mother, who remained gracious even in divorce, that Dad had moved to a small town in New Mexico. He worked as a landscape contractor and kept to himself. He never remarried. He seemed to live a quiet, solitary life. Good, I thought. Let him be alone with his guilt. One evening, sitting in my apartment in Portland, I finally understood something that had taken me years to figure out. The biggest betrayal wasn't what my father did to me. It was that I had loved him so easily, so completely without question. I had been willing to trust him with everything because he was my father, and he had been counting on that. But I'd learned something important in the aftermath. I was stronger than the betrayal. I was smarter than his manipulation. I was braver than his cowardice, and I would never, ever give anyone that kind of blind power over me again. The life I built in Portland was small but real. It was mine. I'd chosen it, protected it, and earned it through my own strength. No one could take that away from me now. As I watched the sunset from my apartment window, I realized something else. I'd gotten my revenge. It wasn't dramatic or flashy. It wasn't violent or cruel. My revenge was simply living well. It was building a life that proved I was worth more than my father's lies. It was becoming a person who helped other people heal from betrayal because I understood that pain intimately. My father sat in his small town in New Mexico, alone and small and insignificant, and I was here, alive and free, and finally, truly happy. That was the best revenge of all.